I am joined now by an old friend, but also by the head of Pride, the founder of Pride Uganda. Good morning, George.
Good morning to you, Joel. How are you doing? Thank you for this phone call.
I am doing well, and we're very happy to have you on. Can you tell the listeners what exactly is Pride Uganda?
I'll be more than happy to tell you that. Well, Pride Uganda, actually, the full name for Pride Uganda is Pride Uganda Alliance International. In short, it's PUAI. And Pride Uganda supports mostly individuals from East Africa, but also includes members from other communities. As FAST, a bi-weekly social group for gays and lesbians who are mostly newcomers to Canada. And it also includes assistance for refugees and permanent residents that meet, discuss topics of interest, and all take part in any creative and accessible activity in the community. So, Pride Uganda, basically, we provide support and advocacy to individuals who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender from Africa. And the support and information is related to immigration and settlement processes for LGBT refugees and permanent residents. We also offer personal growth, community involvement, connections, commit to volunteering, and also capture and build upon our organization and our community history.
George, how long has Pride Uganda been around? When was your group formed?
Right. The group, Pride Uganda, was originally started off by 6 members, and it was formerly called Pride Uganda Toronto in 2005. The original members were 5 males and a female, and most have since moved on, all dispersed all over Canada. Now, the name change came about to include members from other communities, thus dropping the Pride Uganda Toronto name to Pride Uganda Alliance International. So, the group started in 2005.
And I just want to turn briefly to the situation in Uganda and in East Africa more generally. I know it's been in the news, and the international community did manage to apply enough pressure that the particular legislation that was before the Ugandan parliament that would have imposed the death penalty for being homosexual didn't pass. It wasn't brought to a vote this year. But in your opinion, how likely are we to see that legislation resurface in a future sitting of the Ugandan parliament?
Well, basically what happened is the Ugandan parliament closed in May this year without debating the much-feared anti-homosexual bill. The bill was hastily brought back at the last possible moment within a broader critique of the terrible human rights crisis situation in which Uganda is going through. And because we're going to go through elections, and of course the elections since passed. Now, people did put a lot of pressure, to protest the bill, and obviously it was quickly shelved after they were threatened with aid, and obviously I'm sure, I don't know exactly what the specifics of what really happened, but it was quickly shelved. Now, it was just shelved. It is something that can be brought back in the next parliament. I mean, it's not like it's the end of the bill. We need to hear that the chapter is closed completely. But as long as it's not completely closed, then chances are it is going to come back. Now, the trouble is, while it is shelved at the moment, the persecution is still going on. The government hasn't done anything yet to cater the persecution of homosexuals. I mean, if they could provide some sort of protection for sexual minorities, then there would be optimism that there is, something happening for the gay community. But that hasn't happened, unfortunately. So, we're still pessimistic that it's going to come back sometime. We don't know when, but we're just, listening out to see what's in the grapevine.
And I think you've touched exactly on what my next question was going to be, which is, even though this legislation didn't pass, could you just tell us a little bit, what is it like for an LGBT person living in Uganda on a day-to-day basis? Not even necessarily an activist, but just an average person living in Uganda today. Even though this particular bill didn't pass, I understand there are still criminal laws on the books. And What is it like to be an LGBT individual living in Uganda day to day today?
Unfortunately, the situation is more frightening. The anti-gay sentiment in Uganda had increased since the bill's introduction. And because of the media attention and because of some church leaders who have been preaching for the bill's passage to congregations. Now, Mr. Bahati, the MP, originally his bill carried some harsh provisions. So, while the prostitutions were already there, I mean, people were already doing that quietly in their homes, it was being done in the villages, people were being killed anonymously, and nobody paid any attention to what was happening to those individuals. You know, basically, society was trying to get rid of the heathen people, basically. So I have had situations where I'm receiving so many requests from sexual minorities, people who want to escape. And we're overwhelmed with the requests. We don't know what to do to help them, basically. And the only alternative we had, owing to the pressure, we can only lobby the government, and hopefully the government can do something to help these individuals. Now, for us to lobby the government, whether through MPs, whether lobbying the executive branch or even Parliament, the provisions of the Immigration Act themselves are limited. So, unfortunately, those individuals suffering persecution, they will continue dying until the international community comes round to push hard on the Ugandan government to see how they can save these sexual minorities.
I'm not sure how much hope you hold out for the Ugandan government to actually take on its role of protecting sexual minorities. I know that Amnesty International has actually implicated the government in arbitrary arrests of LGBT individuals, including torture while in police custody. And there was a high-profile case earlier this year where a prominent activist, David Kato, was found bludgeoned to death. The police and the government have claimed this was the result of a robbery gone awry. Do you buy that explanation? Was this just a coincidence that this prominent activist in the midst of this culture was found beaten to death? Do you believe the government when they say that this was a robbery gone awry?
No, most of us, I mean, obviously, the government will do anything to cover its tracks, obviously. They had to answer to the international community. It was no robbery. Why did it have to happen to this specific individual who is an activist? And obviously, something horrible could have happened to David Kato, the one who was murdered, because he was very vocal. And probably the government saw him as a threat. Obviously, they had to come up with something a little, what's the word to use here, milder to explain that it was a robbery. But it wasn't that. If it was no robbery, then why hasn't the government provided some sort of protection to those activists, whereby that if it was a robbery or any sort of harassment, it can be addressed immediately, not something that would lead to a death. So most of us didn't buy the explanation of a robbery. No, it was definitely a targeted murder.
Turning back to Pride Uganda and to the Canadian context, I know in light of what you've described, the day-to-day livelihood, the Amnesty International reports, that your group actually testified before a committee of the House of Commons earlier this year as to the situation in Uganda, but also as to what Canadians and your group can do to help. Tell us about that experience being before a committee of Parliament.
Well, Joe, I was really surprised. I remember for us when I wrote that letter to Parliament to seek their audience and also to explain the circumstances of the sexual minority persecutions in Uganda, we least expected a positive answer, actually. And then, actually, it was a Conservative MP who replied to me, and he told me that they were interested in hearing us out. And obviously, where everybody thought we wouldn't get any response, there we are. We had the response, and we were invited. I went there with a colleague of mine, a female colleague. She prefers to be anonymous for now. And we presented argument. We did have to try to present a solid, covering almost every aspect of, assistance we're trying to seek, and why we needed that assistance to help the sexual minorities back in Uganda.
How long did you have to make this argument to the MPs on the committee? And I didn't ask, but what was the specific committee that you were before?
The specific committee we were before, it was the Subcommittee on International Human Rights, and it's affiliated to the Foreign Affairs Committee. That's how I understand it. It's got one of those long names. And the time we had with the committee was almost an hour. I heard about 45 minutes of explaining my reasons why we were in front of the committee. And then obviously there were some question and answer moments whereby, we had various questions from various MPs who wanted to find out more, to understand why we were before them.
And I guess you've started to answer there. How did you find the response from the MPs? Did you find them genuinely interested in learning more? Were you happy with the questions? Or were there some MPs that you felt opposition from?
Well, now, yes, all the MPs were sympathetic. And there was, I'm trying to remember this MP, Mr. Maston MP, he's an NDP MP. He was Muslim, and he actually complimented him and told me that it was very daring of me to face them in front of them, and he recognized my passion in trying to advocate my cause. There was also a Labour MP as well who was passionate. I understand he's also gay himself, who took on, a deeper interest to try and to unite all party members to help the situation. The Conservatives, they were quiet most of the time, although they seemed to have a grasp of what was really going on. I couldn't really tell much what they were thinking or what was their way forward, but at least I noticed they had an understanding of the situation.
Well, that certainly is positive. I know that you were before the committee before the election. So you were before the committee when we were still in a minority parliament situation.
And that was in November 2010.
Have you heard anything since our most recent election and the election of a majority conservative government? Has there been any change, or is the work progressing as you would have expected to?
There are still ongoing subsequent inquiries and studies, and by the time the Parliament folded, there wasn't any conclusive decision, really, because after we had appeared before Parliament, there were 3 other interviews from immigration specialists to answer about the treatment of sexual minorities in Uganda. And everybody, they gave their interesting answers, basically. That is basically what has happened. So, as far as I'm concerned, because we haven't received an opinion yet or a letter from the subcommittee as yet, and obviously many other events are still unfolding, for now we're still submitting more information to the subcommittee to explain what is really ongoing. Now, our target as Pride Uganda is to seek group resettlement. Now, group resettlement is also limited in scope anyway, because it's an administrative project provided by the Immigration Act, yet there are limitations to how it can be carried. For now, as far as I'm concerned, the government is trying to do something about the persecution of sexual minorities through sponsorship programs. But private sponsorship programs have got their limitations as well. For us, as of now, we are trying to seek government assistance sponsorship. If we can get that, at least then we shall be able to get some sexual minorities out of harm's way.
You've mentioned that you're still working on getting government support. What are the other next steps for Pride Uganda?
Well, at the moment, until we do get some concrete answers that definitely say that either they can do it for us or not, we're still waiting for those answers, because at least we've not received a final decision from the committee. I am very much in touch with the Prime Minister's office. I've had some response from the Immigration Minister. I'm yet to receive any response from the Foreign Affairs Minister as well. So I can't really say there is some progress, but we are not yet there. We're just waiting to see what happens, basically.
And George, for listeners who may want to join in those social meetings and the support that Pride Uganda offers here in Canada, or just they want more information, or maybe they'd like to make a donation to your group, where can they go online to find that information or to make a donation or connect with you?
Well, thank you for that kind question. Well, any supporters or sympathizers who would like to be in touch with us, they can visit us on our website, which is www.pua-int.org. There we do have a contact email, which is info@pua-int.org. On our website at the moment, we are trying to set up an account or maybe something with PayPal, but those are plans in progress. So anyone who wants to make a donation, they can always send us an email, and then we can provide them with our account, and then they can make a deposit to our account. At the moment, we're not a charitable organization. Any donations can be done out of their kindness without an expectation of getting a charitable receipt. But all those are things in the works.
Excellent. And maybe just for people who hadn't grabbed a pen yet, what exactly that was? The website was PUI, and I didn't get the rest of it. Maybe say it one more time for the listeners.
Okay. The website is www.P for Peter, U for Uniform, A for Apple, hyphen, I for India, N for Nancy, T for Tommy, .org.
Thank you so much, George. This is obviously a critical issue, and as we move through our Pride celebrations here in Toronto that really are celebrations and moments of joy, I think it's really important for us to remember that around the world the struggle for LGBT rights continues, and there are places where it can be deadly just to be who you are. And I really appreciate you joining us to talk a little bit about the situation in East Africa. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Joel, for the interview. And obviously, our presence shall be noticed at the Pride Parade as well. We shall be at various organizations. And those who are interested, they can always visit us on our website and contact us by email. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, George.
All right, then.